Hey everyone, it's time for another Everquest video already. I've been hearing some rumblings about the new TLP server, and it sounds exciting. The official word seems to be that they're going to be revisiting some of the most popular rule sets from past TLPs, and the common consensus seems to be that this can only mean one thing: Mischief 2.0. There are also strong indicators that FTE will be back, and that this TLP will be starting in Kunark era rather than Classic. There's some good and bad about this in my opinion, but I plan on making an entire video about the new TLP once I know some more, so I'm going to save my opinions for that. In the meantime, this video is about something I did back on the Mischief server, and I may try and replicate on this server if the rule set allows. This is the story of Zerkdonttwerk the Pacifist Berserker. The Berserker that I leveled from 1 to 65 as soon as the Gates of Discord expansion dropped on the Mischief server in 6 hours and 8 minutes, without ever leaving the Plane of Knowledge or killing a single mob, and made just over 1 million platinum in the process. So first a little backstory about how and why this worked. In the early days of Everquest, before the first expansion, the Runes of Kunark, there were two planes that were the primary raiding zones for the era. There was the Plane of Hate, that was ruled by Inaruk, the god of hate, and there was the Plane of Fear, that was ruled by Kazakh Thule, the god of, well, fear. There are a lot of trash mobs to clear in these zones, and those trash mobs drop no-drop pieces of class-specific armor that was the top-end gear in early EQ. Well, some of it was anyway. Some of it was itemized in really bizarre ways, like int on warrior boots, charisma on cleric items, and agility on mage shoes. But like I said, it was no-drop. Once you got it, you could not sell it or trade it to other players, and you could not hand it down to alts. You couldn't even sell it to vendors. This gear, particularly the chest and leg slot, was sought after gear when people got it, so many held onto it in their banks when they replaced it. MMO players can be real pack rats sometimes. And there it sat, quietly taking up bank space, until eventually along came the fourth expansion of Everquest, the Planes of Power. A controversial expansion to say the least. For some it was their favorite, a high point in the Everquest timeline, but for some it was the expansion where Everquest changed. They saw it as the expansion that started the eventual downfall of EQ. Personally, though, I loved it. With Planes of Power, the Everquest game developers added guild masters for each class to the Plane of Knowledge, the zone that acted as the central hub for the expansion. These guild masters would accept old pieces of planar armor that had been languishing in the banks of players all across Norath for in some cases years, and in return would give the players a gem that would sell to a vendor for between 9 and 238 platinum and a small bit of experience. The experience was a pittance for most players who were level 60 or higher at the time, and the gear couldn't be gotten at all until level 46 at the earliest because that is the minimum level to zone into the planes. So no one that was high enough to be able to turn in the gear even gave the experience a second thought. So fast forward to the Mischief server, the crowning achievement in TLP rule sets, random loot and free trade. It was a hit. It attracted the regular TLP group and more, bringing back players to the game who hadn't played in years. And with the new Mischief rule set came all kinds of opportunities for player creativity. You could loot and sell so many things that you never could before. The planar armor quest was on my mind from the beginning. I would regularly remind the group of friends I was playing with to keep their planar armor. You could get blue diamonds for that stuff if you turn it in once pop drops, I would say. I saved some of it myself, of course. Once Planes of Power came out, I handed in my saved up gear, I collected my gems, I had a little laugh at the tiny bit of experience I got, and I got on with my day. Not long after that, I decided to go to the plains and see if I could clear the mobs myself using my druid and monk combo. Turns out I could. So I started farming Plane of Fear with my duo, turning in the armor drops for gems, and then it hit me. It occurred to me to check and see if I could turn in the armor with lower level alts. Surely the NPC wouldn't accept a turn-in from a player too low level to get the gear in the first place, right? So I parceled a couple pieces to an alt and turned them in. It worked. And I was pleasantly surprised how much experience I got for each turn-in. I could see the bar move like a noticeable amount. So I made a level 1 alt, and I turned in a piece with him, and it got me close to a quarter of a level with a single turn-in. I was onto something here. I needed to do some testing and some math. So I leveled some alts, stopping at each level to turn in 1 chest or leg slot item and 1 lesser piece. The chest and leg turn-ins gave about 1.6 times the experience of a lesser item like hands, feet, head, or wrist. I started building a spreadsheet and used it to predict how many turn-ins I would need for each level for the 2 different turn-ins, and tested it at several levels where I had alts able to do the turn-ins to confirm my predictions. When my testing and calculating was done, I predicted that I would need 7,847 small pieces of armor, or 4,708 chest and leg slot pieces, or more likely a number somewhere in between using a combination of gear, to level a character from 1 to 65. Sorry, I had to read that off of the sheet. There was a lot of numbers there I wasn't going to remember. But what class would I level doing this? Berserker. Gates of Discord was on the horizon, and with it would come a new class. I could race for server first level 65 Berserker doing nothing but quest turn-ins and Plane of Knowledge. I mean, the name of the game is Everquest, right? So why not? So that was my plan, to level a Pacifist Berserker. It was January 17th, and Gates of Discord was set to release at 5 p.m. East Coast time on March 30th. That gave me only 72 days to farm up about 7,000 pieces of armor. And of course, figure out where to put it all. I had a lot of work to do. So I started farming. There were 2 zones where the planar armor dropped, the Plane of Hate and the Plane of Fear, as I said earlier. Fear was an easier clear and had more armor dropping mobs to kill, so it became my main focus. The trash in these zones respawned every 4 hours, so I started waking up at 4 a.m. to get a clear in before work. I would clear again after work, and then again right before bed if I wasn't too tired. And of course, after every clear, I had to sort all of the drops and parcel them to mules. I needed to keep an account of every piece of armor that dropped and catalog them to make sure I was keeping up with the pace I needed, and to keep track of the 2 different kinds of turn-ins because of the difference in experience rewarded. The total number of turn-ins would shift lower if I had more chest and legs, and higher if I had less. I had my mules name-coded by the type of gear they held as well. Parceling one type of armor at a time would make turn-ins smoother as the NPCs are scattered around the zone. I also bought the perk that allowed me to access 2 extra inventory slots and 12-slot trader satchels on each account that I used for mules, allowing each mule to hold up to 360 pieces of armor, without having to buy any fancy bags. I was also killing rare raid mobs in the zones for drops that could be sold as twink gear, and I put the platinum earned from that into buying planar armor being sold on the bazaar. I didn't overdo it on the buying though. I didn't want to drive up prices in case I was running short near the end, and I also wanted to keep what I was doing a secret, so I didn't tell anyone until the end when I was confident that I had farmed enough turn-ins. If I had competition farming the plains, it may have really thrown a wrench into what I was doing. As I neared the end of my time, I was up to 26 mules spread over 5 accounts holding almost 8,000 pieces of gear, and I had days to spare. I'm lucky I was done early. Just days before Gates of Discord, I caught a nasty case of COVID that had me floored. I was confident that I had enough armor farmed. I suspected that I actually may have had too much because of an experience readjustment that was due at the Gates of Discord launch that would likely increase the experience gotten from the turn-ins. I spent what little energy I had making sure all of my mules were ready to parcel their gear. I memorized the paths to each turn-in NPC and practiced running them with just my mouse while using the parcel system with my other mouse so I could gain some efficiency. When the day of the expansion launch arrived, I was ready. I was exhausted, had COVID and a migraine, and could barely sit up straight, but I was ready. I logged my mule accounts in and ran everyone over to the Parcel Master. I had my fresh account where my Berserker was going to live ready and set to the main character creation screen. As soon as Gates went live, I created Zerkdonttwerk the Barbarian Berserker and immediately ran him to the Plane of Knowledge while I started parceling armor. I had my bard waiting in the Plane of Knowledge to give a run speed song to my fresh Berserker that would last the duration because buffs don't wear off in Plane of Knowledge. I didn't want to waste time going and buying bags, so I had pre-bought 2 40-slot and 2 20-slot bags with Daybreak cash that I just had to claim. It was around this time that I discovered the first hurdle. On expansion launch, the parcel system is extremely laggy. It was way slower going than I expected, sending everything and then withdrawing it, but I made do with what I had and struggled through it. The first round of turn-ins got me to around level 20 in minutes, and I was rolling. I was sending parcels, running back and forth, turning in gear 4 pieces at a time. I would check on others leveling every so often, and by the mid-40s I was way ahead of the competition. It was at this point where I started getting messages from people asking me how I was so high already, and without leaving the Plane of Knowledge no less. At level 63, another Berserker was getting close at 62 and being AoE power leveled by his guild in the Plane of Innovation. When I hit 64, he was 63, and I was on the home stretch. Sadly, he turned on the afterburners and ended up beating me to 65 by less than 10 minutes. But he had help. I was doing this solo and without even killing any mobs, so I feel like I still accomplished something. In the end, it took me 6 hours and 8 minutes of quest turn-ins and ended up taking over 5,000 pieces of gear. The experience boost that came with Gates of Discord helped me enough that I had well over 2,000 pieces of gear left over to put into AA levels. After getting some AAs from additional turn-ins, I ended up with over 6,000 gems, which I was able to vendor for a total of 1,013,427 platinum, which I believe at the time was 3 or 4 chrono. And as I said, I still had more gear left to do with as I pleased. If I had not already done the grind to max out jewel crafting on my enchanter, these gems would have gone a long way towards that. And yes, I could have gotten more platinum if I sold the blue diamonds on the bazaar or made jewelry and vendored that, but I didn't want to take the time for a few thousand extra plat. I can say with confidence that in my 25 years of playing MMORPGs, this is the most time and effort I have ever put into something like this, and in my opinion, it's the coolest thing I've ever achieved. I mean, I'm not saying that I deserve a statue or a plaque in the Plane of Knowledge or something, but I mean, if the EQ devs ever did something like that, I certainly wouldn't complain. Well, thanks for listening to my Pacifist Berserker story. I certainly love telling it, although my friends and wife are sick of hearing about it. If you think this was a cool story, hit the like or the subscribe button to help my channel out a little bit, and I'll be back soon with more videos. Talk to you next time.